Jerry worked the night shift for a malting facility in Shakopee, Minnesota. He was alone up in one of the mixing towers, looking over the unprotected edge into the vat of barley grain below. He stared as the wet grain stuck to the blades of the mixer, trying to decide how to best remove it. What happened next would change everything. As he moved around to get a better look, his foot got caught on some hoses that laid across the walkway that fed into the machine. He tripped, lost his balance, and fell headfirst into the vat of grain. The wet grain was impossible to tread. It was like quicksand, and he became stuck instantly with his head barely above the grain. A moment later, the mechanical mixing arms that moved the grain around the vat snagged one of his limbs and pulled him completely under the grain. The machine eventually deposited him toward the center of the giant mixing machine, well below the surface. We don't know if he died of asphyxiation from being smothered by the wet grain, or if the churning metal arms did too much damage as it dragged him around the inside, or how long he struggled to free himself before he passed. His body was found about an hour and a half later by his co-workers on the 17th floor near the center of the mixer after they went to look for him because he never came back to the office after his inspections. The problem was that the company Jerry worked for hadn't equipped the machine with any form of emergency stop button that Jerry could access after he tripped into the vat. Nearly all heavy-duty industrial equipment is required to have some form of emergency shutoff for this exact reason, to save the very life of the operator in case of a mishap. His company also didn't have any type of lockout-tagout procedures for unjamming the mixer, which meant that if there was a gummed-up mixer, the workers would have to unjam it while the machine is running. This is not good. Doing it this way would inevitably put someone in their workforce in harm's way. If it wasn't Jerry tonight, maybe someone else tomorrow. The tangled mess of pressure hoses that Jerry tripped on, while not an immediate cause of his death, still made the workplace a little bit more dangerous and proved fatal for Jerry when he couldn't find good footing. But the biggest reason that Jerry ended up in the bottom of that vat of grain was because the company failed to have the most basic of guardrails installed at the edges of the vat to keep people from falling into the machine. Jerry would be here today if this one thing had been done differently. But with over 17 floors of vats, it's no wonder why the company didn't bother, as they probably thought it was too expensive to get done. The company was fined by OSHA a total of $30,000 for Jerry's death and all of the safety violations that created the situation for him to die. Do you think Jerry's death was preventable? Did the OSHA fine the malting company enough? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Marcus was working the night shift at a packaging and labeling plant in Sikeston, Missouri. Marcus was moving some pallets around and getting them into position for other workers, but his forklift had been acting up all night, and he needed to get this last bit of work done before calling it. He was handy, but not a mechanic, and he had years of experience with these types of forklifts. He raised his forks high into the air, then stepped out of his lift and looked up at the mast, trying to figure out what was wrong. Against his better judgment, he climbed up the shell of the lift to get a better look at the mast and what was making it act funny. He stood on the cab and moved himself around the mast to take a loot, positioning himself between the body and the mast. He stood here, staring at the area, trying to figure out what the lift's problem was. And then it happened. The mast shifted. Its immense weight came back to neutral, but Marcus was occupying the gap that the lift was resetting into. He was caught between the cab and the mast and was fatally crushed. Emergency services were unable to help him. The first problem the labeling company had was that there was no lockout-tagout procedure at all for powered industrial trucks. That meant no formal rule saying machines had to be fully de-energized before maintenance or inspection, even basic tasks like the one Marcus was trying to do. The second problem the labeling company had was that they didn't have LOTO devices on hand. There were no lockable power switches or physical means to disable power and make sure it stayed off on the forklifts. Even if Marcus had wanted to secure the truck, there was no way to do it safely. And finally, Marcus had never been trained forklift safety. No one ever told him where the pinch points were. No one ever trained him on the dangers of residual energy or hydraulic compression. It was a system that depended entirely on hope. Hope that no one would get caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. If the company Marcus worked for had a simple rule of thumb to keep operators from trying to fix their forklift, this whole entire situation could have been prevented. The company was fined just over $15,000 for Marcus's death. Do you think that's enough? What do you think the root cause was? Let me know down below. Daniel was working a late afternoon shift for a ski resort maintenance crew in Killington, Vermont. He was inside one of the ski gondolas, performing a routine but risky task of lubricating the cabin grips that keep the gondola secured to its cable line. The process wasn't complicated, but it required attention and sure footing. The cabin grips were above the actual cabin, which meant that Daniel had to stand on a ladder to reach them, and he also needed one of the compartments to be open so that he could reach outside. But the ladder was too big, too clunky. It didn't fit well inside the gondola, but it was the only one Daniel could get on such short notice. He stepped up on it, reached out of the compartment, and started his task of lubrication. It was peak season for the ski resort, and it would be catastrophic for business if the resort had to shut this gondola down, and Daniel rushed his work trying to make it happen. Daniel shifted his weight on the ladder to reach one of the cabin's fittings, and then the unthinkable happened. The ladder shifted under his weight, tipped, and dumped Daniel out of the open compartment and out of the gondola. He fell straight through out of the unprotected compartment opening about 4,000 feet and struck the ground with full force. He died from blunt force trauma before help could even arrive. Daniel was caught in a perfect storm of neglect. His job as part of the maintenance crew and his specific task of lubricating the cabin grips had very specific hazards that were never communicated to him. He never got training on how to deal with these situations, but rather was expected to just do it. No hazard assessment and no training and no task-specific protocol. That was the first mistake. The second one, the biggest one, was that the maintenance department at the ski resort failed to provide the proper ladder type to Daniel for his work. It was too big and didn't fit inside the gondola. This was crucial to help Daniel maintain stable positioning while working in the gondola, especially since he had to reach so far outside just to do his job. I'm honestly surprised the findings didn't include some sort of fall protection as well. Even a simple harness and lanyard would have kept him safe inside. Daniel would have gone home that night if he had the right ladder, or even if he just clipped into a simple harness and lanyard. OSHA fined the company a total of $19,000 for the violations connected to Daniel's death. What do you think could have saved Daniel's life? Let me know what you think down below.